Hello and welcome to this episode of Akrinos Access. I'm Eric Matei, coming to you live from Puccino's Coffee in Metairie, Louisiana, joined by Dr. Sandi Eveleth for a conversation around process management in the modern optometry practice. Dr. Eveleth, thank you so much for joining us here on Akrinos Access.
Absolutely, my pleasure. And how fitting. I was thinking this is going to be like a coffee chat, and here we are in a coffee shop. Love it. I'm gonna virtually think I'm there with you because I love New Orleans.
Oh, well, absolutely, absolutely. And on that note, hope you'll join us here. Optometry's meeting is here in New Orleans. Excuse me, Academy is here in New Orleans. Yeah, Optometry's meeting here in New Orleans next year, 2023. So we'll look forward to you. As a matter of fact, when you're here, text me and I'll come and pick you up and we'll go for a little drive around town and we'll grab coffee here.
Look
That's
at
what we'll
that.
do.
Everybody's going to be jumping into your car. I love it.
Love it, love it.
It's awesome.
But for the time being, every now and again we're throwing curveballs, and we generally do these broadcasts, these recordings from my home office. And well, wouldn't you know, the internet is down. So you always have a plan B. We always want to stay agile. And I've got my plan B, and that is to come to any one of two of these Puccino's locations, each of which are kind of convenient to my house. But as it pertains to this evening's conversation, this is one of five locations that I have seen kind of blossom in recent years. And I think a lot of that growth and scalability is attributed to the processes that the founder of this establishment has put in place. So, on that note, let's go ahead and jump into this
Sure,
conversation. And
sure.
so, Dr. Eveleth, I think it would be a novel place to start with just talking about when we're talking about process optimization, um, processes and systems. I mean, what are we even talking about here?
Right. Because and the real goal here, as we kind of talked a little bit offline, is I just want people thinking about the fact that we absolutely do need processes and systems. A lot of people think, yeah, of course I know that, or hey, I'm too small. Why do I need anything like that? I'm not planning on being like the coffee shop and have five different locations. I'm just a one person shop with maybe two or three team members, or I'm doing all of the work, so I don't really need to have anything in place. And that's not true. It's you don't want that one person to be in charge of everything, and that's the same thing with any of your team members. You don't want one person to be in charge of everything, because we all know what can happen when that person disappears. Everything falls apart. So we're going to go into it. There's a lot of reasons, a lot of benefits for it, but what I wanted to do is just get us to start thinking about it. That was kind of the question that you posed, is how are process and systems inefficiencies affecting your bottom line? So what I want to do is just throw out some questions. And Eric, you're a business owner, so think of it in terms of being, your own business. But here are just a few examples of some of the questions that I ask. And I'm going to read from my notes at times, and we're going to go off script at times. But I created these questions just to get us all thinking about it. So, we're in our practice, and one of the systems we think about is marketing and sales. And a lot of people say, well, I'm just going to leave that to my digital marketing person, or you know what, I really don't have a digital marketing person. We're just going to wing it. Again, this is what we don't want to do. So some questions: how many potential patients are you losing because you have no system for updating your marketing assets, the efforts in your marketing, or even updating your Google business profile? I've gone into detail in many different conversations, being interviewed and doing some, solo talks about the importance of getting on Google business. And that's one of the main ways that you can attract new patients, just by them, throwing in some information into Google. How many patients, potential patients, don't know that you provide specialty products and services because you don't have a system to reach the right communities, the right people, or even having the right systems inside your practice to let every patient that walks through the door know that you actually have a specialty product or service? How many patients or potential patients are you losing because your scheduling process is antiquated, difficult to navigate, or just isn't consistent or implemented correctly? How about appointment reminders and recalls for those patients that you want to get back for some of the specialties that you're doing? So that's the marketing and sales. Again, lots and lots more that we could talk about. But here's some others. How much revenue are you losing because you don't have the proper software system in place to inform your patients about customized product packages? You are probably aware, Eric, of some colleagues of ours, a wonderful husband and wife team. Not sure if you want me to mention it or not, but they have an amazing software that makes it really easy. It's an entire system that they train their staff on to be able to showcase to patients. This is just a piece of what they do, but it actually helps package, products so that it makes it really easy.
Absolutely,
Paradigm,
absolutely.
you
Yeah,
know,
Paradigm. Yeah,
Dr.
Dr. Janelle
Janelle, I
Davidson
mean,
and Jimmy.
yep.
Yeah, also incredible. Yes.
And that's a
Um,
system. That's a system and a
yeah.
process.
So okay. So here's the and I feel like, I mean, look, we've only just started, and you've just rattled off like half a dozen. Okay, so here's the deal, and I think this starts to maybe get at the crux of the importance of this. I'm busy. I say I'm
Yeah.
busy. You know, well, yeah, that's it. I'm busy. I got a full schedule. I got good people, minimal turnover. The culture, I got good culture. Everything's humming along. But man, I still feel like I'm drowning in this practice.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that, because again, like you just rattle off half a dozen things. So let's kind of peel it back and look at it from this angle of, how do you hit the pause button? Like, walk us through the process of understanding the processes, right? Because
Sure.
again, I've got a thriving practice, so we're making money. I'm making good money as the owner, right? I've got good people. We got great culture. We got loyal patients. But man, I'm drowning. You know.
Yes. So, well, the first thing I would say to start is to take a deep breath, pause, and realize part of the
Absolutely.
drowning, yeah, part of the drowning is because there are a lot of inefficiencies, and one of the questions I was going to throw out too is, do you even know where your inefficiencies may exist? So
Right.
most likely not. And again, that's where
Not
people like you
right.
and me can
Yes.
come in and coach and give a little hand. But let's say, we're doing it all on our own, that's fine. The big thing is to realize that, first of all, understand why this is important. If you have to cut yourself some slack. We do not have to be what entrepreneurs know is the absolute Olympic player, McDonald's. We do not have to be.
Yeah.
We're going to use the athlete example. I don't want everybody thinking that's listening right now that they absolutely have to be, the win the the big award, get the Olympic medal, the gold medal. We want to start off slowly. We're back in we're pee-wee baseball right now. We're little ones, and we're just learning how to hit the ball off of the tee stand.
Love it.
So
Yes.
let's not get overwhelmed. Let's just say, okay, hold on. In the vein that you asked, well, I'm overwhelmed. Okay, where do you think we start to do an analysis? We do a what's not working. We can always start with what's working, but also look at, I want to see where the overwhelm is. What isn't working? Where am I drowning? And I'm only starting there because you posed that question. Look at, hey, you know what? We've got a lot of turnover. Okay, well, why do you have a lot of turnover? And I know your company works a lot with that, is we've got to dig in and find out, you know, what's going on. Most likely, let me back up a little bit because this is going to address a lot of what we're talking about today. And it has to do with the what and the why behind the how. So before I jump into the how, let's get into the why and what the overwhelm, all of that is. So obviously process improvement is making sure that we're creating proactive tasks. We're not being reactive and I'm drowning, I'm drowning, I'm drowning. We're actually setting some time aside, whether we take a weekend and say, okay, let's take that pause and start doing some of the analysis. And we'll talk about that in a second. But it's a proactive task of identifying, analyzing, and improving upon the existing processes that you have. And then you're going to optimize it to meet new standards of quality. And part of that is, don't forget, and I know you know this, your first customer is your team, is your staff. We need to keep them happy so we don't have this turnover. And part of that is putting systems in place so they feel they've got the boundaries, they've got the comfort zone. It's not that, oh, when you start putting these processes in place, I'm going to feel like I'm in a box. No, 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 no. What it does is it sets up a place where it makes everything else easy. You can be, and you absolutely are more creative when you have systems in place. So let me do one more thing and then let's chat
Please.
about it.
Absolutely.
I'm going to
Absolutely.
give you two main resources, and what a lot of this education is founded on. One of them is the E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber, and he did come out with a specific one for the optometric practice. He wrote it with an optometrist, which is wonderful, the E-Myth for optometrists. And then the other book is Systemology by David Jennings. And in fact, David has a foreword in, Michael Gerber wrote a foreword in his book. So these two are very much aligned. So in the E-Myth, and this goes way back when I first opened my own private practice many, many years ago, read the book before I opened the practice. The E-Myth talks about systems and people. And basically, good systems are only half of the equation. This is a quote now from him. The people you hire make up the other half. To make it possible for your systems to free you and to replace your personal ability, in other words, if something happens to you or your main person, the systems can take over and people can actually step in. But it's to replace your personal ability to produce results. You need people who value what you value, who care more about doing things effectively than doing things their way, who have good judgment and the capacity to grow, who want to leave things in a better place than they found them. You've got to get them bought in and they've got to embody those values. So lastly, I'll say in this is structure and substance. Those are the two things. It's the balance between structure and substance. According to E-Myth, structure is every predetermined element of a system. It's the step-by-step process you build to produce consistent, predictable results. The substance is what your team brings to your systems, the spirit, attitude, skills, and experience of your employees, what they bring the business to life. So you can't have one without the other. If you have the structure without the substance, you've got that robotic, oh my gosh, I hate those call centers because they sound like a bunch of robots. And you can't just have the substance because you're going to have chaos if it ends up
Yes.
being.
Yes. So I think then the challenge becomes that fine line is twofold. One is outsource. Actually, I suppose it's three things. One is outsource. Two is other innovative solutions, i.e., SaaS solutions. And three
Yep.
is if we're talking about people, and really, well, let's stay on this topic of people. Three is what? It's all about delegation. So let's
Yep.
talk about that. Let's talk about as the owner having faith in your people and delegating and how to balance accountability, how to balance empowerment and autonomy with structure and accountability. Why don't you speak to that?
Well, and if you have, obviously, if you have the structure in place, you're going to have key performance indicators. You're going to have the accountability built right into the system. There's going to
Beautiful.
be ways, everything that you have is going to have some sort of a checklist or some sort of a, let's tick that off, that if you reach this certain result, we know that it's working. And remember,
Yeah.
in the E-Myth, he talks about, if something's not working, it's either the structure or the substance or both. So it makes it easy when you start having these systems in place where you do have quantifiable, qualifiable results, accountability, then you're going to be able to tell, is it the system or is the person not doing the system? So we know we need to have a conversation with that person. Or everybody's saying, listen, I don't like the way this new scheduling system thing, you got all excited about this process and system and you didn't check with us first to see if this would work for our practice. So another thing I see a lot of consultants do is they think it's a cookie cutter. They kind of go by the McDonald's where, oh, it's got to be cookie cutter. That's the same, we need to do this for everybody. And I found that when we had consultants initially, it's like, no. We have a certain personality, a certain culture in our practice. This is how we want to treat our patients. We're family, we're this, we're that. So we don't want this high pressure sales. You need to work with us. It's the same thing with systems. Systems, just because I'm saying systems, it doesn't mean it's cookie cutter. We want to find the custom system for your practice. We want to make sure that it works for you and it works for the team. It doesn't mean that we need to, it needs to be everybody has input. Part of this process that I'm teaching is you want to find that key person, the one that has proven for the most part, as you're building these systems, has the most knowledge around that system. That's one of the steps that I talk about, is you want to make sure that as you're capturing these systems and you're starting to create them, you're capturing the knowledge from the person that knows it the best and has executed it the best. It doesn't just mean that they know it the best, but you've watched their performance. So you want them to take the lead on that, and that empowers them. That gives them a sense of ownership. And now you get more buy-in because you have all these different people that are helping to develop this, this overall system of systems, but each one is putting their input, and the system is going to have to, each process is going to have some form of, if you did this, it's working. If you don't do this, it's not working. So that's going to be built into each one of those processes.
So where to start? Like
Exactly.
if we're really for those viewers that are like, hey, lay it out for me.
Yep.
Where to start?
Yep. So the how. I'm going to do sort of a general overall, because this is not something new for the eye care practice. Just as you mentioned, the coffee shop, and as we know, McDonald's. There's a lot of businesses out there that just do this for other businesses, that just teach this for other businesses. And the you there still? Okay. So the overall steps, this is something that's not specific to eye care and is not specific to any specific organization. But what you want to do is you want to start by, you want to achieve something. You want to find out the goal of each process. What is it that you want to achieve with this process? So again, let's go back to scheduling patients. We want to be able to make sure that we're scheduling the right patients in the right slots. And can we automate some of this process, if not all of it? Why do we want to do that? Well, we want to free up time so that instead of doing this, some of this robotic scheduling patients, if they're just routine exams, and have perhaps that person help with, onboarding new patients, doing some of the pre-screening, maybe do some of the, hey, have you thought about this? We're in Tampa, Florida. We need polarized sunglasses. Are you a golfer? Do we need specific progressives, et cetera, et cetera? Some of that sales conversation that brings in more revenue can take place. That's why we want a better scheduling system. We also want to make sure that patients are getting pre-appointed once a year. Can we do that automatically? How do we make that happen? So we want to achieve that by making sure we're filling every single slot on our schedule. That's the most important thing, and that we're taking care of our patients and they're not upset because they can't get their appointment scheduled. So the next thing, go ahead.
Well, no, I was just gonna check in that. So it starts with you really need to identify what is your goal, and that's something that I think sometimes folks struggle with, right? Exactly, what is the goal? Like, what is it that's unsettling? What is it that I'm observing that's causing friction, perhaps for our team, for our patients, any aspect of the business, right? So it really starts with, you have to identify the goal, right? Because unless we have a goal that can be quantified, and you mentioned earlier, there's got to be some way to measure this stuff, have KPIs to assign to it. It's only then that we can kind of start to work back. So,
Absolutely.
Okay, so the how, it starts with understanding what the goal is. You shared a few things regarding, filling the right patients in the right exam slots, what have you. So,
and again, this is for each process. I mean, overall, the
oh
overall
yes,
goal is, why do we
it's a
want this?
web.
We want to have a more efficient practice, and we want to make more money. I mean, the profit,
Sure,
we want to keep our patients happy and our team happy. But now we're talking about each specific process. So
sure,
you want to
yeah,
do this for each process. So then you want to ask, who is it that we want to serve? There may be a specific process. Most of it's going to be our patients in our demographic, in our local demographic. But you might have specific processes that, because you have a specialty practice, which as a private practice consultant, you're advising everybody to do, is to make sure they've got, certain specialties. We want to see who do we want to attract in our practice? Are we doing vision therapy, sports vision therapy, et cetera? So we're going to want to define for each one of those processes, is there a specific, if you want to call them, patient avatar, or, a specific patient that you're aware of. So you want to map that out. Then you want to map out, what's working, identify, analyze what's working now, and then what's not working. So do you have a process in place for this particular thing that you want to achieve? Again, we use the example of scheduling. What is working, what's not? How aware is the team about, and this is something that's going to be a continuous, we're going to continue to evaluate this on a regular basis, but how aware is the team about using the specific process? Do they even know how to use the software? Did they know that you implemented pre-appointing every patient once a year? And part of that comes into when you start to develop these processes, you're also developing a training manual. As you start developing these processes, you're plugging into this bigger aspect of every time you onboard a new team member, you're having them go over to XYZ files. And again, we create a dashboard for housing all of those specific processes. And again, I'll go into detail, a little bit more detail on that.
And that's where, Sandy, I think realizing, if we're talking about the doctor owner becoming operationally irrelevant to the enterprise, right?
Yep.
A lot of it dials back to that, like the implementation. But you laid down a lot of really great things here. So okay, so it started with, here we're talking about the who. So it already talks about the how, like identifying what exactly is the goal. Then it's a matter of like the who. So we need to identify the stakeholders. Is it patient centric? Is it people centric? Team centric? Right? From there, identify.
Sorry, I was going to say, because sometimes when I'm saying who it is, I mentioned patients, but absolutely some of your processes are internal. So in that second step, when we're identifying who it's for, it may be for your team members.
Absolutely. So yeah. So from there, so we identify the stakeholders. Is it patient centric, team centric? Better understanding those personas, understanding what's working, understanding what's not working. Absolutely. Which obviously what comes to mind there, I think, to everyone, what comes to everyone's mind is conversions, right? And whether that is I think conventionally it may be conversions in the optical, conversions with contact lenses, obviously a facet of any practice. But now with modern practices, conversions of our specialty, right? Vision therapy, absolutely. Sports vision, myopia, dry eye, right? But really identifying where are we missing, because I think something else that's important to point out to listeners is that where we're having success, that's working. We're already hitting the mark. We're resonating with patients. Our systems are resonating with our teams internally. It's where things are slipping through the cracks, and it boils down to, I think, ultimately, and where we had left it here, is all about implementation,
right?
And being sure everything is documented, right? Okay, so now let's take it a step further. When we're talking about implementation, I think in the context of implementation, we should probably talk a bit about feedback loop and a host of things that really apply to staying informed. If the ultimate end goal is to set it and forget it, we do need to be realistic that does not just happen like that. So talk a little bit about implementation.
Right. Well, and part of it, and this goes to the buy-in as well, as implementation is you want someone to own that process. And again, it's going to be you've got to find that key person that was doing a good job, and it's good to assign that to that person, because now they're taking ownership of it, and that increases the buy-in. And so when you've got different people owning different processes, and then of course you're sharing that, you have a system for sharing that along the way. You have your, whether it's your 5-minute stand-up meetings or your weekly meetings or monthly meetings, however you do that. And again, you'll want a system for your meetings. But once you assign that to someone and they take ownership of it, they're also going to be watching for improvements and continuous feedback, and where can we fix this? Why isn't it working? Why didn't the new hire do a good job? Is it we didn't we didn't show the process very well. We didn't do the documentation correctly. Why isn't that person? They should have been able to sort of, plug into that system and be able to do it in a relatively short period of time because of the way the systems have been done, and implementing the measuring, being able to do that. Um, so, that's a part of it. And we'll go into detail in just a second about documentation, because that's what that other book that I mentioned kind of kicks in. So you do want to, in this, which you're probably leading to, once you do start to implement and you do this continuous improvement, we're implementing the new system. It's working here, but it's not working there. Keep evaluating. Is it the person or is it the system? Have we not trained the person well enough in the system, or is there a breakdown in the system? Now that we know it's one or the other, because we're starting to put these systems into play, it makes it a lot easier to get to the solution much quicker than to have this continuous chaos. And I can't tell you the number of practices that I've worked at, both private and corporate, where I see employees that have been there for a long time repeating the questions on how to do certain tasks. And it surprises me, and it's the realization that there is no documentation for this process. People are sort of changing it as they go because there wasn't a system that was put into place, and they're not implementing it on a consistent basis.
The classic, because that's the way we've always done it,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
And I suppose this all goes without saying. The way we've always done it, it's not that it's failed. It's gotten you to where you are now.
Right. It's worked.
Okay. But you do need to understand if there are things you want to do to adapt to truly become a modern practice, and whether that is external patient community facing or internal operations and process facing, um, it still applies. On that note, let's talk a little bit about internal process facing. I know something that you and I have really hit it off on is understanding, and you referenced an amazing platform and paradigm. Dr. Janelle Davison and Jimmy Davison, this amazing solution they've created. But let's talk a bit about the role of SaaS solutions in the modern optometry practice, because the fact of the matter is this: a lot of this stuff wasn't around. A lot of stuff wasn't even around 5 years ago, much
Sure.
less 10 or 20 years ago. So let's talk about the role of SaaS solutions in processes.
Sure. And, something to consider too, because you do have, and I tend to, this is how I got into this, is I've always been excited about productivity. You have systems software and you have project management software. And as the practice gets bigger and bigger, you actually want to separate those. You don't necessarily want those to be the same thing, because you end up being, project management tends to be more task oriented, whereas system management tends to be more document oriented. And, in the documentation, we can get into this a little bit more, is there's a whole system in the systemology book that I mentioned, where you, again, set up a system that works specifically for you. And this is where you have to be careful with SaaS, because you want to make sure that you can customize it to work for your specific culture. But in the systemology book, he talks about documenting processes. And the way to document the processes is you literally have the person that's assigned to it, whether it's their smartphone or a mini camcorder or what, but you videotape the process happening. And there's a really simple, easy way. You can do it with just using Google Drive or any other, file storage system. And you just make sure that you make it easy and understandable and easy to index where all of these videos are going. Make sure it makes sense. Make sure, if you have 7 categories in your practice of where you want to have systems, make sure you're doing that appropriately and things don't get lost, and then make it more chaotic, which is exactly what you're trying to avoid. So again, a system for tracking your systems. But, and we talked about this, and this may be where you're going, but I started using Notion, which is basically started out as a note-taking app and is now turned into this wonderful, you can pretty much customize have databases and pages and move things around and make all kinds of connections. But I think the big thing is understanding that the solution is out there, and understanding that it doesn't have to be a one size fits all. And you and I can put together a resource page and we can have a whole bunch of different SaaS solutions. But I think the important thing is to understand that it has to be customized to your practice and how you and your team like to work, because you and I know all of a sudden, though, all of us doctors that go to practice management seminars and then come back and we're so excited about everything we're going to change in the practice, and the rest of the team just rolls their eyes and thinks, oh, please, no, we don't want another one of those. So you have to get buy-in on that.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, I suppose, I suppose to kind of start to pull things together here, Dr. Eveleth. And I know we have only just started like chipping away at this massive iceberg, but share with us a bit about the fascinating work you're doing, right? And you mentioned Notion, so maybe also speak to a little bit behind that, and again, what you're doing, how folks can get in touch with you if they want to
Sure.
advance this conversation further, or see
Sure.
like if this is really resonating with them.
Sure. Well, and again, this started with a great conversation that you and I had about how we can help each other. But I absolutely love stepping into practice and find out where they're having issues, and a lot of times they don't even know. They just know, like you said, they're sort of drowning. So I'm, from the moment I try to find the location, I do my online research. How easy is it for a patient to find a particular location? Is their marketing up to speed? Does what they present themselves online actually match what I see when I step into a practice? So it's from the appearance of the outside. How's the parking lot? How's the lighting? A lot of patients are real concerned about how easy it is to find and park at a place, to, how well do they keep up the inside? Um, how am I greeted? How did I make the appointment online? How easy was it for that? And on and on and on. And again, I will put together a document that you can share with your viewers that at least gets everybody thinking about what they have to look at in their practices, in the form of what systems should I have. It could go on for pages and pages, but I want you to just get started thinking about it and thinking where you could make one or two major improvements. But that's what I love to do. I love helping with all things marketing, more in the educational aspect of things. I don't do marketing for others, but I absolutely love helping others learn more about marketing and how they can do it themselves, and also process improvement. Best way to reach out to me, believe it or not, is through either connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm there quite a bit. I think that's how you and I connected. DMing, or go ahead and I think that's actually the best way to reach me. You can find my website at my name, drsandieveleth.com. And, having done web design, I get in there and update some of my website, but I used to do others more than I did my own. So, but you know how
Well,
that goes. But I love, I
absolutely
love LinkedIn. I love connecting with others. So feel free to connect with me there.
awesome. Well, Dr. Sandi Eveleth, thank you so much for hanging out, having this conversation all around process management, process optimization in modern optometry. So thank you all. For those of us joining us live, for those viewers out there, if you want to get more great content like this, subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on the socials, and definitely check out akrinos.com frequently to connect with amazing people like Dr. Sandi Eveleth around a lot of really great practical content like this. So thank you all so very much, Dr. Eveleth. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
Until next
Thank you for
time.
doing all that you do. We appreciate it. You're just rocking it. Really appreciate it.
Excellent. Excellent. Until next time, Eric Matei signing off.